Hello world und hallo Wien. And I think we have a echo somewhere. Is it me? This one. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining our August meetup. It's weird hearing myself. Not sure why we have the echo. That's what I like. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you very much, Square, for hosting us in this wonderful office and for the refreshing beverages and pizza, I suppose, later on for the live audience. Would you like to present Square to the world and to Vienna?
Yeah, also from Square side, we are very happy to have you here on board. Actually, it's the first time I have the pleasure to welcome you here, as I have joined recently Square. Recently means 2 months ago, being responsible for cloud infrastructure team. Of course, I have not too much idea about .NET, but luckily we have our colleagues here who are very deep into this topic and will show you some pretty nice insight. I also have seen some coding before, so stay tuned. Yeah, as already mentioned, you can stay after the event and have a pizza or beer and chat with us. Of course, would be very great to talk to each of you. A lot of people. Let's see if I can do it with everyone, but just come to me. Thank you so much and enjoy your stay.
Thank you so much, Square, for hosting and also for 15%, 33% sponsoring the talks for today. Also, a big thank you to our sponsors, Rubicon and JetBrains, where JetBrains is also raffling a yearly JetBrains license. So if you are on YouTube and or on Twitch, you can enter hashtag JetBrains to the chat. For the live audience, the same. If you'd like to join either our Twitch or YouTube channel, if you click the video, enter JetBrains, you can also take part in the raffle at the end of our today's lightning talks. But before we do that, we always have community news. Today we have 2 items. One is, we have a new overhauled website of the .NET Devs AT Verein. Andreas, if you're watching, this applause was for you. Thank you very much. And yeah, take a look at it. Tell us what you like. Still work in progress. Perhaps not all the links are just working, but we're gonna continuously improve that experience. Also, the Microsoft from Zero to Hero is also again, they had the .NET July, but also in August they have more .NET events. So if you go to the website microsofthero.com and go to the calendar, you will see a lot of sessions there, and there's also a bunch of .NET sessions coming up. What's also coming up is our next meetup. So we are tightly scheduling monthly sessions. The topic is still to be done, to be defined for September, but the date is fixed on September the 16th, and we will have Rodney Littles coming from the States to Vienna to talk about .NET. Speaking about hosting meetups, if you would like to host a meetup at your company at a location that you know, please let us know. Please email us at team@netdevs.at. We're always looking for location sponsors, and you also get 5 minutes of fame, of course. Speaking of 5 minutes of fame, we extend it now to 15 minutes of fame, and we have our first session from Shahab, from events to evidence, .NET observability with OpenTelemetry, Serilog, Grafana Cloud, and Aspire. technical difficulties. We'll be right back.
I don't know. So I guess I should say hi again. So that was a good start into the talk, and I already lost 5 minutes of 15 minutes. I have the echo as well. I think I could just mute myself. Is it working now? Perfect. Yeah. So as I was saying, we had a couple of weeks we were working on like enabling observability logs and everything to go to Grafana Cloud in our scenario, but also being able to do the same things in our local environment as well. So this is going to be just like how easy you could just set up those things, and some of the gotchas that take us like 2 hours of debugging instead of reading 5 minutes of the documentation. And so we are here. So to enable the to make OpenTelemetry is a standard that came around. I don't know the year exactly, but it standardized everything that all the different companies were doing about like collecting metrics, logs, traces, especially in distributed systems when you need to debug your system where a request has affected which systems process those things with the traces. And then it is a standardized. And now we want to see how to do that in .NET. So as everything in .NET, we need like a NuGet package, obviously, and OpenTelemetry that host is the one that we could add to our web API application. This is a web API application. There's nothing fancy here. We have just weather forecast and like a pure web API example, just enabling things there. So the obvious thing, let's start with adding OpenTelemetry to our application, and then we could define our resource in here. The resource is things that are publishing metrics, traces, logs to the target place that we want to do. And in this application, and in here we have our application as a resource, and we could give it like a service name, whatever, let's say be observable, I don't know, something like that. And you could also add like other attributes to wherever you are. We will see that shortly, like in a dashboard in the Grafana, but we could also add some attributes in here, and like new dictionary, the attributes that we want to put there. Hopefully it's correct. And this service.name that we are putting in here will override the one that is in here. Just bear in mind. And now I want to enable metrics in my application. So I want to say what kind of metric we are interested. It's an opt-in operation. So if you don't opt in for any metrics, even though they might be like created somewhere, they will not be collected to be exported, right? So and for this, there's a concept of instrumentation. We need to add those packages to our application. So in the instrumentation, we have, for example, ASP.NET Core instrumentation, which contains metrics about the ASP.NET application that you're running, or you have the HTTP, which is about the HTTP client and the request that you are sending as an HTTP request, or the runtime, which gives you metrics about the runtime of your application. So let's just add them to our application as well. And then we would have here metric that add ASP.NET Core instrumentation, or add runtime instrumentation, or HTTP client. Of course, you could also create your own metrics in your application, and then you need to add it in here as well. Good. Then the last thing is the tracing, that I want to add like some traces for my application, and it also is an opt-in. You could just add, let's say, ASP.NET Core and then the HTTP client. So far we are collecting the information, and the next step is like where we want to export this information that we have collected. And there's the concept of exporters coming in. So OpenTelemetry, exporters, export OpenTelemetry protocol is the standard protocol for the OpenTelemetry. There are different exporters, like you could export to the console, which might be helpful if you're doing like development on your local machine. I don't know, Zipkin, Yega, or any other tool out there. Let's stick with the OpenTelemetry protocol, which is the standard in here, and then use OTLP exporter. As a parameter, it also accepts a Lambda expression or a Lambda function that you could pass in. If you don't, it just uses the environment variables on that environment and system that you are running, right? So I already set up, let's go to our Grafana cloud. I already have like an account there, but if you go to grafana.com and you create an organization and cloud, then if we go to, or you know, here, is the zooming fine, Stefan? Or
Perhaps a bit more. I guess I will see that.
okay, yeah. And so now I'm not seeing, yeah. Then you go to the details of your organization, and then there is OpenTelemetry. You could go configure your OpenTelemetry endpoints here, and you could also generate an API token just for making it secure and like securely sending the data, so not everyone could just export data to your OpenTelemetry endpoint. I already created those things and set it up in my application as an environment variable. So if we go in here, you see these are the environment variables that I set in here. So OTL exporter, OTLP endpoint, headers, and protocol. And in the headers, it's just like a basic authorization based on the key that you are getting from the portal. You could just put it in here. And for the protocol, there are two protocols. One is HTTP protobuf, and the other one is gRPC. That they are using two different approaches. Cool. Then, if for the fun of the session, let's also remove all the logging providers that we have, so we don't export the logs at the moment. Clear providers, and then let's just run the application. So I'm not gonna wait for the console to show anything, because it probably doesn't, because I already removed. So a couple of requests going there. And if I'll go to my Grafana dashboard, hopefully we should be seeing something. Yeah, I removed all the log providers, but I still get some logs. I'm not sure the traces are are showing up in here. Let's see. Okay, the metric seems to be for some reason not here. But anyway, so I'm having the logs in here, but sorry. Yeah, a bit more zoom. Yeah, sure. Good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I'm not finding the menus now.
As much zoom as possible.
Okay, I think this should be fine still. Good. So the thing is, when you are using the use OTLP exporter, if you go to the implementation of that, it tells that they automatically turn all signals on. So even though you're removing all the log providers from your application, by using the use OTLP exporter, you will still publish the logs to the destination of your application. If you don't want to do that, because like me, you might be a fan of Serilog to use enrichers and formatters and all of those things, and not just like normal logs, then you could remove this method. I'm just commenting it out. If I do proper, and then here you could say for each of them like .add OTLP exporter, and here as well .add OTLP exporter. Then we don't have any logs now going to our application. And you cannot use these two methods together. It will just at the beginning, like at the startup of the application, it just throws an exception that you cannot use add OTLP exporter and use an OTLP exporter together. Remove one of them and like decide what you want to do. So again, some requests going here, refresh, and no logs is happening in here. But let's configure our Serilog to export to OpenTelemetry using OpenTelemetry protocol. So I'm going to add Serilog, Serilog ASP.NET Corp because we are in that environment, and also the sync OpenTelemetry. Who uses Serilog in production and environment? Okay, so not that much. I expected more people to use Serilog, but good. Logging.add OpenTelemetry. And here we could add some, let's just stick with the default settings that it provides. And I think that's it. Let's, if I'm at Serilog, and I'm adding that because I want to add the use Serilog request logging in here just for the one of the, see, again doing some things. If we refresh, okay, something's wrong. Let's go back. I think I'm using logger equals new logger configuration. Yeah, dot write to dot OpenTelemetry. This is what we need to do, and create logger and logging that add not OpenTelemetry but that add Serilog. Sorry. Logger, the static instance of the Serilog setting that did this one, and this one automatically use that if you don't pass any logger there. Let's see if it is working or not. Yeah, and now we are getting like unknown service be observable. It just created like another kind of a stream of data there, and it's not the same as this one because Serilog by default is not using the standard OpenTelemetry SDK that is provided. It has its own implementation which is compatible with OpenTelemetry protocol. So you need to here like pass the options and yeah, that's not what I wanted. And in the options, for example, we could add like resource attributes. These resource attributes are more or less the same as the attributes that we have in here. And we could set it in here, and then we are good to go. And if we don't also configure the endpoints or the headers or anything, it also uses the environment variables for fetching those information. See, now if we see, it publishes now like all the data in here, and Trey says, do we have still metrics now? What's wrong with them? Anyway, so now let's add an Spire project. This is how we could publish like those data to Grafana Cloud and use that. Let's add like an Spire project to our application. So Spire host, and let's create that one. See if it works. Going to program. Okay. I'm going to add a reference to the project that I have. Add project. And it would be observable project, and I think that should be it. And we could give it a name like be observable from Spire. And edit configuration. Let's run our Spire host application. Spire. I think it should be fine. Let's see if I'm missing something or not. Oh no. What is the error? Target framework is not specified. What? Launch setting, profiles, and okay, for some reason my rider is not helping. Okay, what could go wrong like on a live coding session? So the thing that is happening if we are running the project through the Aspire is that the Aspire is setting up those environment variables for the environment that it creates and overrides whatever configuration you are passing through this. So it took like a lot of time that we recognize why our so here in our serializer, I could say options.endpoint to be somewhere, right? And come on. And then when we were running our project through the Aspire in the development, we wanted like to still publish to some development environment that we had for in the Grafana cloud and like publish the data there. But we didn't see all of those collected data in there because Aspire was overriding everything. And one parameter in here is like to pass, if I have it correctly, yeah, ignore environments, and you should say like set it to true so it uses the configuration that you are setting in here and not the environment variables. But bear in mind that the Aspire will override those configuration, and if you want like to have your own configuration, you could also use with environment in here and like override it with whatever value you want. But this is just like something that take us like some time to detect. Okay, we are running a project through Aspire and not directly running that project. And I don't know. Do I have still time for any questions?
Oh, most definitely.
Then
We do not have questions in the chat, but are there some questions from the live audience?
there. No.
So I have a very general question, like what is the main reason that the company or you choose this technology? Because I think the configuration seems kind of complicated. And what is the main reason why you choose to do this way?
I'm not sure. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
The question is that what is the main reason why you choose to use this, not other maybe service or not other maybe different one? Why
we choose Grafana Cloud? Yeah, the reason it was like the customer want like have the licenses and all the things in there, and they wanted like to push it to there. But using the open telemetry approach is just like flexible. So if you're publishing to some AWS service or I don't know Azure App Insight or Azure Monitor, I think all of them are kind of like compatible with open telemetry protocol and like the standard. So you could also switch between them. So the reason we are using open telemetry is just being able to stick with their standards and like publishing to any environment that we want. And currently they are trying it with the Grafana Cloud, and they're having like some offerings from them. So that's the reason we are using Grafana Cloud.
There is a question from the live chat. How can I use OpenTelemetry to monitor possible memory leaks? And can I log something like the top 5 memory allocating variables by size?
I think the runtime instrumentation provides some metrics regarding that. I'm not 100% sure. I remember like seeing something like about those things, that provides you with like garbage collection information, I think, and the memory consumption and those things. And I think with kind of analyzing those things, you probably could like detect memory leaks and things like that.
And another question, can these logs be persisted to a file?
Yes. I mean, yes. So if there's also like with tracing and things, there's also with logging, and you could also configure like have a console exporter that will file exporter that will just export them to a file. Also with Serilog, you also have a console sync, file sync. Why I'm saying console all the time. So you could here say write to OpenTelemetry or write to file. If you add the file sync, I think I could just quickly do that. Yeah, and then you could configure where. For some reason, my system is broken. I think I need a new laptop. Yeah, so by adding the file sync or the file exporter, you could just write to the file. Delvians.
Some more questions before we transition to the next session? I suppose this applause is for you.
Thank you.
So we are now transitioning to Gregor, who will talk about .NET Aspire versus test containers.
I see already. Yeah, yeah. So, welcome. I hope audio also looks good or sounds good. Perfect. So, welcome to the second talk of the evening out of 3. I also have a rather brief a brief or short talk today. I will present also .NET Aspire, but it won't be as detailed as before about the dashboarding and the telemetry. I will talk more about Aspire and also test containers. So usually we start now with a little agenda as we have learned our past selves. No. Quickly, my name is Gregor Dostal. I'm also a .NET developer, currently working at Heilig and Schubert, but I'm also a DevOps engineer who likes to tinker with a lot of new frameworks and also libraries. especially when I can also combine them with GitHub. For example, also GitHub Actions. So, Aspire and test containers. Has anybody used here already Aspire except our speaker before? I know already. Okay, and test containers also somebody? Ah, okay, nice. So, why do we usually choose to have Aspire or test containers in our environment? In my opinion, it's all about like the shift left paradigm also, like having an easier and faster setup for the developer to get started with their development of new services and new exciting possibilities. For these cases, we usually have like a lot of services in our environments, like microservice architecture is, I think, pretty well known already. And therefore, we might need some kind of orchestration there. So basically, Aspire is one of those toolings that we can leverage instead of having to maintain manual files, like the Docker files that we need to define for our services. And there's even more, like when they need to interact with each other, we might need Docker Compose or even Kubernetes services. But then it gets kind of complicated. So usually we try to stick to our well-known, you could say, second natural language, .NET, and try to like having it easier life and faster development cycle for setting up new services. Therefore, Aspire is very good in this area for orchestration of a lot of services. In comparison to test containers, which are also running a Docker environment or spinning up containers and services, are more a slimlined, a lightweight approach that is more often used for testing purposes. For example, test containers might also have a little bit of an orchestration in there, but it's more work to wire all those services up correctly. Yeah, so just a hint of more points there. As said, Docker files are kind of cumbersome, and also the exposing of ports sometimes when you have a lot of services, you might need to look up for the manual created files if there is not already a port in use that you want to expose. But the good thing also for containerization in general is that we have the possibility to have more of a clean environment. We are not dependent on external services like databases or other cloud services, let's say an S3 storage. So we can have everything locally on our development machine. So how does one of those Aspire projects look like? Basically, this is the starter example that Microsoft gives in one of their templates. On the right side, you have more like this blue box where you can see like the .NET Aspire app host. This is the orchestrator basically, where you wire all the services up that you want to use for your scenarios. In this case, this might be a database, an API, and a front end. And then, in addition, we usually have some kind of a test project that wants also to use those services. So that's then more on the left side of this or outside of the blue box area. I'll show you a quick code example to that. At first, I don't have any kind of containers running currently, so this is all invoked locally here. And this is one of those app host examples. We have multiple services or multiple project files, as you can see here, 4 in total that the starter provides, or the starter template provides. in this case, we just want to wire up some default API service with the name API service and also a web front end. But we will also have a SQL server with, in this case, the name default connection. Yeah. So to invoke or use any kind of other service for the testing, we also need to wire or set up our integration tests. In this case, I'm using TUnit. Has anybody else used TUnit before? A few people. So TUnit is kind of the new kid on the block, you could say, compared to XUnit and MS Test. NUnit should already be known. TUnit is a source-generated test, basically, or test framework. So here we're leveraging also AOT, ahead of time compilation, to have a little bit of a faster startup time. But there are also some drawbacks for TUnit. Because it's kind of new, there are also some kind of, yeah, you could say annoying bugs where sometimes TUnit doesn't work or is easy to use for us as a developer. Basically, from my side, in the IDE, I want just to run a test like here, just say hit start and run it. So for Visual Studio, we're using Test Explorer. And this TUnit needs the test host adapter, which is kind of a more new or modern interface for testing discovery. As you might see here also, I know it's a little bit small, there is the number of 51 tests are currently in there because I have there a matrix, but as you might notice, it's currently just 1 to 5. So there should be actually like 6 test cases in total. The reason is with TUnit, tests are discovered when they are compiled. So ahead in the development cycle, you don't see actually the real number of test cases until it's built. And yeah, for TUnit, for those test host adapters, they might not work everywhere. So even Visual Studio code works currently with those test host adapters very well. But unfortunately for Rider, I tested it just today morning. It's currently broken, sadly. At least for my environment here. I tested it on a Mac and also here on the Windows. Sadly, both broken. Yeah, as said, there are a lot of things still to do until it gets more established. But yeah, anyway, what I'm doing here for this little test is I'm having a base class that wires everything up in the background. Usually for testing, we just want to have those services instantiated once while the test is running and not per each test case. So basically per test session ideally. Otherwise, we would spend a lot of time just starting containers, stopping containers, and the test itself might be just a few milliseconds, but startup takes seconds, so not ideal. Therefore, we have in here with TUnit a little hint that tells him, hey, we just wanted to invoke this reset mechanism basically before each test invocation. So in here, we are using respawn, it's called. Also can see it here below. Or respawner, it's called, the tooling. Where I can just tell it, clean everything in the database, because here in this case, I only focus on the database and just keep the migrations and everything else gets dropped, basically. So for each test, we have a clean state to start with. And in addition, to prevent having 2 tests running at the same time, which is actually one of the plus points for TUnit, that it runs asynchronous and in parallel all of the tests, we actually need to limit it, sadly, to just 1 instance. So otherwise we would have like a, let's say crosstalk and our tests would fail randomly, or every time, depends how much tests you have. Yeah. So when we built the test project, we should also see that the test explorer is picking up the, or I hope it does. Still compiling. Let's see. Okay, today is a slow day. I love it. But anyway, the other side then will be test containers. As already mentioned, I like to use Aspire, especially for development purposes, to have all the dashboard and insights in there already to diagnose the stuff when actually something goes really bad. Also in this simple case here, actually, for the integration test, you might actually see also the old run times of around 25 seconds that it took for 51 tests only is actually around over 20 seconds just startup time. One of the reasons is usually that services that depend on each other might not be ready and might also start a little bit early, then fail and start again. So that's why also these kind of tests, I see someone is already grinning there and has a lot of experience in this area. No, a little bit. Okay. Yeah, that it is actually just until it is in a healthy state, the tests won't start. That's why it takes quite long. For CI purposes, if you have a lot of tests and you really want to have like your end-to-end testing, might be fine when you have a lot of microservices. But usually you just want to have it done fast. Also your CI pipeline, the longer it runs, the longer other people are waiting to get to the next point, to the next merge. That's why I tend to use test containers for smaller integration tests. So you can just trust me if you like to, but I can also run the tests, but I think I will skip the tests for now, for the time. For test containers, so how did the right combination? No. This one, yes. For test containers, we try to keep it more slimlined, like having one service with a dependency to a database or a storage, but not to a whole of other services. So test containers are basically very similar. You can also tell them to keep your environments or containers running even after the test. So if you want to investigate some issues, this is also a good opportunity to just let them be alive and then connect afterwards to those instances to better understand maybe the data a schema that has been produced. Yeah, also to this, a small code example. So this is just a basic ASP.NET Core web example that you already know with a simple controller. It's just added with a little bit of a database instance where we have, like here in this case, MS SQL instance again. There we have like added it as an in-memory collector. And to set all the things up, it's just a few lines of code. That's the nice thing about test containers. So in this case, I'm actually keeping a list of my currently running SQL containers if there would be multiple that are needed. And afterwards, just tear it down again. And depending if you want to reuse them or not, they will be kept in your environment. So for local development or testing, if you want to iterate on your tests faster, you can just let them keep running. It doesn't matter for you actually if it takes a little bit more storage at the moment, especially RAM, because the container isn't doing anything at all, usually. except being a RAM hook. And for an integration test, here we're now using XUnit. I think everyone will already know that framework. So here we are fetching our DB context again. We have that here behind in the integration test base, all set up again. Also with respawn as previously, so that we have on init of our tests already a reset or clean state of our database. In this case, we're just doing a simple adding one entry to your database, and that's it. Let's see quickly at the test, so that you also see now the times it takes usually for those stuff to run. You can also see it very nicely in the Docker. That one of the instances, the SQL database spins up. Still, tests are not running because the instance isn't ready actually. There's still more missing. And yeah, as previously mentioned, 25 seconds is long. Anyone waiting there? I would go grab a coffee now, but yeah, still need to talk a little bit here. Oh, come on. In the meantime, I wish I could start multiple tests. This would be nice to have here, but yeah, 2 sessions. 1 minute even, wow, okay. Yeah, I'm just running on batteries, so might be the case why this takes a lot longer. But still, the container is then also tiered down here. As you can see, nothing is on your machine again. And now for test containers, he actually told it to just keep the containers as they are, to have a second run more easier and faster. So, as said, also running with power might be a little bit faster, but I think we're nearly over this. So, but it still keeps a little bit on running. I just also want to do a little comparison. I will show you afterwards the result. Yeah, as said, I like Aspire for the orchestration, especially like the dashboarding. I will also show this afterwards, then again, with the results. And when you have really multiple microservices, it's a lot less headache to have it local on your developer machine. But even for test containers to have in a CI pipeline, it's, for my personal opinion, too slow, basically for the setup part. That's why we have usually test containers in the CI pipeline and having, yeah, less steps to go, or to have a tight integration test, you could say. So let's see if it's done. Okay, 3.1 seconds. The test wants me to tell it. It took a lot less, but still, we have our test container. It might not be running at the moment because it stopped automatically. So it's not destroyed. You still have it. You can start it again. You can inspect it, what the results are also, especially when it failed. That's very handy. So, before going to the Q&A, has anybody not seen the Aspire dashboard so far? 1, 2, okay. At least a few, yeah. I can show a little bit more. Except the host tells me I need to cut it. I can go. Okay, perfect. So so a lot of people have already used it. More in the early stages or more in the later up-to-date versions? I mean, there has a lot of been in progress with this. Also like the graph overview. I think very nice if you have multiple services and you want to see which is connected to what and what the states of them are. But also if you want to like inspect the console logs. Similar to Portainer, you could say, might be also one of those tools that is a little bit more known. You also have your console already here. And also if you have like any kind of invocation that you can inspect. Still, there are no invocations to the web front end, so let's do that real quick. Where did I place my small little HTTP client file? Ah, there it is. So let's quickly send a request. The typical weather forecast. I think it's sunny today. When it does it, it's sharp, yeah. It's slow on batteries. Love it. But yeah, now we have our forecast. We see our API service. I mean, there was just the API service at the moment, but we can also go to a web front end directly. So yeah, we want to know about the weather, more weather. Beautiful. And still, we have a lot more invocations. Also, which services are in use for these kind of requests. So, very handy tooling. Also, filtering all of your trace data. So, as said previously, OpenTelemetry is your friend in this case to have all this information at hand. So far, I think when there are not any more things you want to see on the dashboard, do you have any kind of questions? Yes.
Hello. So my question is, when you said we use Aspire locally, does it help in any way in production, for example, or you need to translate it to other services that actually help in production?
The funny thing is, I think in the past repeats itself. Basically, stuff that should be on your developer side makes it to production somehow, or very often. Like, let's ship your develop to production because it works on your machine, basically, you could say. In my opinion, the tooling is for internal testing very good. If you want to set up those things fast, to have it for your evaluation testing and such stuff. But more like for a production environment where you need a life cycle to have, like, let's say, a blue-green deployment. There you should have a defined strategy that is more infrastructure as code driven, to be on the safe side, so that you're not fearing like, I need to step back. What do I need to do now? I just have the Aspire host. So I think Aspire is a quick way to get a first impression to the customer too. So you can use it for that, but I would not run it in production, basically. Yeah. Anyone else? Maybe from the stream?
Some question of the stream. I start with the first one. To your testing, how you test failures and rollback, like both traditional transaction rollback as well as something like Saga-based handling event-driven communication in your approach.
Sorry, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Once again, please.
So how you test failure and plus rollback?
How do I test the kind of bad case scenarios?
For example, yeah,
as mentioned, the Saga pattern there. Yeah, this is one of more the typical patterns for microservice architecture, where you have usually, or I do it with an error queue that is also tied to a notification for our support team to also have a look in those services when there might be, let's say, either a fluke in the environment. It could happen that the service suddenly dies or a host dies or needs to be restarted because of updates. Could happen. And they forgot to drain the host. Could happen. Then you need some kind of a replay mechanism usually for those things. But it's very different from environment to environment how that's handled. If it might be now a message queue or might it be just a database entry? Could also be. It's very different for each use case. Hard to tell. Yeah. Well.
Good. Other question, a short one. So I must find it. Is Aspire also helpful for console applications, like running multiple background services?
Like having multiple background workers, I would say. If you are using OpenTelemetry with Aspire, or in your console application, adding OpenTelemetry with, like, let's say, spans, for example, that you can differentiate your requests and also your further services, it will help you to identify those request pipeline easier, and also having more of a like brief look how long does one of those requests take. In general, you could also use other dashboards for this kind of OpenTelemetry information. For example, Sentry is also one of those things. You could also use a login framework to monitor or even showcase how your services are interacting and how long one of these information is taking to its destination.
This wasn't the point of your presentation or of your talk, but you mentioned T-Unit, and I'm curious, do you see a benefit to compile time, like shifting everything to compile time, when the big time sink here is obviously the container starting, as we've seen?
Basically, I just use T-Unit here for Aspire showcasing. It's not officially in the docs to use T-Unit with Aspire, more like X-Unit, N-Unit. But I just wanted to try it out for myself. So this was actually the first time I used T-Unit, I must admit. So I'm happy it worked yesterday evening and also today. I like it because it's a little bit more straightforward in the whole setup, and that it's parallel and async out of the box. But you can also run it already just with .NET Run. So it's not .NET Test Run. So really just .NET Run because of the test host adapter. That's a little bit different to the X-Unit and N-Unit.
Okay, cool.
So,
Thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else? No? Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Gregor. And I do like this question a lot because this kind of transitions now to my session. Transitioning to C# interceptors, native AOT, and performance for free. Source generators are included. Oops, totally doxing myself. This is what I wanted to do. Hello world, I'm Stefan Pölz. I am working at Sentry, where we help you with monitoring your applications and in particular errors and help you to fix them. We've just recently released, just 2 days ago, also logs for Sentry now for the .NET SDK. So you can use Sentry and just use your existing iLog infrastructure, and now you get logs, including with all the errors ingested into Sentry. I'm a co-organizer of the .NET Devs AT website. Yeah, I love the new website, .NET Devs AT Meetup. A Microsoft MVP, a Champions Community contributor, and a co-host of the To Code or Not to Code live stream if you can't get enough of .NET. Now, .NET is fast, and since I can already smell the pizza and saw some refreshing beverages being prepared, I will make this also a quick one. So we'll take a peek at what interceptors are. They have been introduced a while back as an experimental feature, but now with C# 13, if I'm not mixing up, they are now stable. So what does an interceptor do? You can think of it like the go-to statement, but the inverse of a go-to statement. I don't say the program instructions go over there. I say, come to me. So I'm having here a small demo. And if we run this, we have a static method and an instance method. And we run this, and we just get printed to the console the hello world and the .NET Devs AT August 2025, prefixed with ordinary method, which is coming from both this static method and this instance method. Just good old .NET. Now I am adding this attribute. Don't think about this attribute not too much, but this attribute is now waking up a source generator that is creating an interceptor. Interceptors are not meant to be created by user code. They are meant to be generated by a source generator. Now, if we run this again, and if I would be setting breakpoints here and try to debug, I haven't really changed anything of my code that is calling this. I just let the generator do its thing, and we will not hit these breakpoints anymore. And I should connect so everything gets faster. Yes. And we see it's no longer the ordinary method. It's now intercepted. But where is this coming from? If we take a peek at our project structure, dependencies, .NET 9 source generators, we see a couple of source generators working. And one source generator is creating this document. We see this is an auto-generated document that has the .g.cs suffix. We also get auto-generated comments. And if I try to edit it, Radar says, no, this is a read-only file. This is not actually physically on disk. Now we have this intercepts location attribute. Keep that in mind. This has a version and data. This is where the interception, the source level interception is kicking in. And here are now those two methods that are intercepting our calls, the intercepted generator one. If we want to intercept a static method, well, we just write a static method ourselves with a compatible signature. What's a compatible signature? This one is a method that returns a string and takes a string. So our interceptor should also return a string and take a string. And here this attribute is where the interception is kicking in. Version, there's just a version because in a couple of years there could be a version 2. So it's future-proof. And this string, it's an encoded string that has the location where we come from, the source, the location where we come from, and also some checksum, which is basically pointing to this invocation here, which now means that, think of the come from, we no longer, as it's statically bound, call into this method. No, now the interceptor kicks in and basically says, hey, if we hit this method, please go to here. Same also works with instance methods. Interceptors are always static, so how can we intercept an instance method? Well, by doing a classic extension method. Now with C#14, we get extension everything, so that's the classic extension syntax, where we now have this instance as a receiver type, and still, this is a method that takes a string and returns a string, and we take a string and return a string. And this is all happening at compile time. So this is compile time sleight of hand that the compiler now does in not calling the method that we actually invoke here, but we have some generated code that now says, no, come to me. Why would we want to do this? Let's take another peek. This is all source generated. Let's take another aspect of source generators. They are great at performance, because with source generators, it's in the Roslyn tool chain, they can look at our code at compile time and create special case code, all at compile time. Let's consider this regex example. We want to find strings that end in .cs or .vb. So we find all files that are supported and can be compiled by Roslyn. We have here a compiled regex. We see it as the compiled flag, and this is compiled not at build time, but at runtime. So we have new IL code being emitted, being compiled once, which is then reused, so that the first invocation is a little bit slower, but subsequent invocations are as fast as they can be. Then we have a couple of benchmarks. Who likes benchmarks? Yes, I like them a little bit too much, but I need my daily dose. So one benchmark, it is just an interpreted regex where we see we don't have the compiled one, and we create a new regex and then call the is match on it. We also have the compiled version. Well, this is pretty bad because we create a new regex, a compiled one that does the compiling. So that's not interpreted, it does the first time compiling, which takes longer. And then, well, we don't cache this. So this is super bad, but we see what the price of this first one is. Then we have the one which is reusing the cached runtime compiled regex. And also with newer versions of .NET, there's also build time compiled regexes, source generated regexes, which is done via here. And again, we can take a peek at dependencies, net9, source generators, and we see the system text, regular expressions, source generator kicking in, and now generating. They also do nice comments. This regex, but already at build time, nothing at runtime. And if we take a peek at the results, we see if we use an interpreted regex, always with a new instance, that takes like 2.5 milliseconds and allocates a kilobyte each. If we do the bad thing and reuse a compiled regex, the runtime compiled regex, so we don't reuse it, we compile it once, run it, we see the price of this initial runtime compiled hit. So this actually takes 1.5 milliseconds and allocates 14 kilobytes. The thing is, when we start reusing this runtime compiled regex, we get amazing performance. So this is the first run, takes a lot, but every subsequent run now is just that's 50 nanoseconds and 0 allocations. So we can do the math, and like in this one, is it like 50 invocations? So at some point, this initial price will amortize. But what if we don't even want to pay this initial price? What if we shift this runtime compiled complexity already to build time? And this is where our generated version comes in. That's even, well, there is barely a difference. This computer is not the fastest one, but the numbers give some scale. So this is as fast, in some cases even faster, as the runtime compiled version, without paying the price of the initial run at compile time, where it's actually at runtime, where it actually needs to be compiled. And this is the power of the JIT, the just-in-time compiler of .NET. We can even, so we have our IL code that is then translated into machine code. So we have our IL code, and we have our exe. And when I run this now on my Windows, or actually it's not an exe, it's usually a DLL. And if I run this on my Win x64 machine, the JIT compiler just in time creates WinX64 machine code. If I would run it in a machine that I have on my backpack, it would be OS X ARM64, or if we're running it on a server, most likely it will be Linux machine code, all stemming from the same DLL, the intermediate language code. We build it once, one everywhere. But we always pay the price of the JIT. Now the JIT is quite a beast. We have amazing features like tiered compilation, dynamic PGO, profile guided optimizations, on-stack replacement that all help with amazing steady state performance. But still, the just-in-time compiler needs to do some work. If we don't want to pay the price of this initial work, we can go over to AOT, ahead of time compiled code, where we already at build time, not at runtime, create machine-specific code. That means we no longer have an executable that we can run everywhere, but we have something that is ready to go and doesn't even contain the just-in-time compiler anymore. So we will see faster startup performance. The second scenario, if it was not this device, but from the other vendor in restricted environments such as iOS, there is no JIT allowed. So on iOS devices, we cannot have JIT, just-in-time compiled code. So we must use some form of native AOT. So depending on startup performance for hyperscaling scenarios, or maybe on restricted environments, we may need to use AOT. But what about features like the regex, the compiled regex, the runtime compiled regex wouldn't work anymore. If we run the compiled time regex on an AOT environment, we will always get the interpreted version. So the slower one that took, in our case, 2.5 microseconds, I think. If I were using the source-generated version, that's still as fast as it can be, even on native AOT. So source-generated code is moving the complexity from runtime to build time. But I need to rewrite the code. I can no longer use this regex how I used to write it. I need to use the generated version. That looks a little bit different. We have some partial code indicating that something else, the generator, is creating the implementation. I have to rewrite my code. The kind of is not as convenient as if I wouldn't need to write this code. And just magically, we would get AOT compiled code. This is where interceptors come in. Now, if we combine source generators and interceptors, if we have the source generator generate the special case build time compiled version, and then an interceptor invoking, instead of this the JIT version, now this AOT version, we get fast code without changing any of our code. Now let's consider this minimal API scenario. I commented out all the native AOT stuff, so that's just all just-in-time compiled. And taking a peek at the implementation, that's just a default demo from the template. All I added is just a timer that is printing to the via the logger after the application has finished initialization and is ready to receive web requests. So we can measure the startup performance. Now this application is not doing a lot with startup, but if we run this just-in-time compiled version, the JIT kicks in, creates everything, and this takes roughly 300 milliseconds to start up. Well, this is a super petite application, not a lot is going on, but the more initialization you have, the longer it takes. What if I don't want to pay this price, this just-in-time compiled version, because in a hyperscaler scenario for a short-lived application where all the tiered compilation is not really kicking in because it's just maybe a CLI application that lives for half a second. Or if I'm running on a restricted environment where I cannot have the JIT, which is actually minimal API doesn't work in native AOT. When we hover this map get methods, we will see true attributes. Requires unreferenced code. This means if we have, now the name, what's the word of reflection? If we use reflection, string-based reflection, it could be because with native AOT does aggressive trimming. It could be that certain types are eliminated. And if I only refer to a type by string, it could be no longer there in my final binary, and then application would crash. Also, it requires dynamic code, which means it does emit new IL code at runtime, which then needs to be compiled at runtime. So native minimal API does not work in native AOT scenarios because of trimming and the unavailability of of the JIT compiler. But there is a source generator that generates this for us. But again, I would need to rewrite potentially a lot of map get requests if it's a huge application. That's tedious. So .NET team introduced interceptors to this automatically for us. Now what I will do is I will enable some analyzers. I will not enable native EOT just yet. And we will get a bunch of, I need to comment this out as well. And we will get now warnings. We see a little underline that indicates that these two warnings, that if we native EOT compile this, this may cause problems. Let's actually enable publish EOT, which means now a source generator is kicking in. Again, if we go to dependencies, net9 source generators, there is the infamous request delegate generator that is now generating for these two map get methods that I have. Special case map get methods. We have this one here and another one down there. There it is, which is now no longer called, the map gets are no longer called from ASP.NET Core, which requires the JIT compiler and also unreferenced code, so heavily reliant on reflection, to this code that is specifically compiled for my application because it contains all of the services that I use in my get method. And I didn't need to rewrite any of my code. If I now were to .NET publish this code, I enabled publish for native EOT, so I need to specify a one-time identifier because it's no longer one build once, one everywhere. We need to specify the machine I'm building for, in this case WinX64. This would now take on this machine, it's a slower machine, but this will take roughly a minute because there is aggressive trimming coming in. The entire BCL, entire ASP.NET Core are scanned for types that are not needed, that are not referenced by any of my code, statically referenced. This is by reflection. We would lose some types with reflection, and they get eliminated to reduce the size of the final output. And also we get the native EOT compilation. So ahead of time, the .NET toolchain is generating machine code directly. There is no more IL code. There is no more just-in-time compiler. And previously, the JIT version took roughly 300 milliseconds, this super small demo app on this machine, to start up and be ready to receive requests. And with the AOT version, this should be significantly faster. And, well, let me run it again. Yeah, that's more the thing that I wanted to see. So we, it's now roughly 50 milliseconds. I guess on a faster machine, you even get more significant performance benefits. So this is now super ideal for hyperscaler scenarios. And I didn't need to change my code. I just flipped the, hey, please compile for native AOT. And the .NET team, the ASP.NET Core team, has provided an interceptor replacing automatically, I didn't change anything, this code that requires the JIT and reflection. We have special case code in my application that doesn't. And we get the benefits of both, and we can switch for the scenarios that we need without really changing our code. And this is the aspect of getting native EOT and performance for free. Do we have some just-in-time questions? Yeah, I guess the smell of the pizza is intriguing, isn't it?
We have some on YouTube, but maybe you answer it on YouTube because they're a little bit complicated to read it because a lot of text and attributes. So no questions in on the stream.
Then to the questionnaire, please reach out to me on any social media, and you will find me if you Google me, and I will have it answered. I would love the discussion. Sweet. Then. We not only thank the just-in-time compiler of .NET, we also thank our just-in-time stand-ins, Gregor and Shahab. Thank you much for jumping in and providing this wonderful evening today. thank you very much for joining and your patience. We had a bit of a startup problems. We have not AOT compiled this. We pretty much cheated this evening. And it's time for some refreshing beverages and pizza. We want to thank our sponsors, Rubicon, who built software die begeistert, and also JetBrains. And if you have taken part in the raffle, now it's time to do so. There is a second tab. Oh, wait a second. Let's jit this because I forgot this one as well. If we can share the screen. If we go here and totally forgot it. Share screen. And if we go to maybe just the yes. Now let's do the draw. Ah yeah, I think you need to remove me first. No, but let's do it like here. Let's cheat it. The stream will see it. Is Prashad Kumar Yadav in the audience? Yeah, would you mind switching over to my screen? No, then you are the winner of the JetBrains license. Please email us at team@.netdevs.at and we will have your JetBrains license fixed momentarily. And last words, see you next month on the September the 16th, where we'll have Rodney Littles talk about .NET. Thank you very much. Wir haben da, magst du einmal auf das Banners gehen? Ups. Ah, nee, sorry, Media. Und das da. Ja. Ja, und dann muten.